Love has always been a tricky business. Ask around at any cafe and you'll hear stories of friends who swore they'd never go back, but somehow found themselves knocking on the same old door again. Our hearts seem to have a way of leading us into storms we could easily avoid if only we listened to our heads. Ancient thinkers were no strangers to this paradox. They too wrestled with the way desire could blind us, making us chase after what hurts us the most. In their world, just like in ours, love wasn't just poetry and roses, it was also confusion, obsession, and a test of character. The Stoics, in particular, didn't shy away from talking about human attachments. They believed emotions weren't just wild gusts of wind, but forces that could be shaped, trained, and even understood. Epictetus once remarked, "It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them." That means the pain we feel in love doesn't always come from the person we're drawn to, but from the meaning we attach to that person. For the Stoics, love wasn't something to be feared or rejected. It was a field for practicing balance, much like the way a sailor learns to trust the waves while steering the ship. Their insights encourage us to look not only at who we love, but how we love. This leaves us with a puzzle worth sitting with. If wisdom this old already recognized the dangers of misguided affection, why do we still stumble into the same patterns? Why do we, centuries later, find ourselves reliving the same dramas in new costumes? The question isn't just about other people, but about us, our choices, our habits, and the way we measure what's truly valuable in a relationship. And it's right here, at this point of curiosity and discomfort, that we can begin to ask, what guidance can Stoic philosophy actually offer us to break this cycle? If this question has ever made you pause for a moment, if you've caught yourself nodding along, remembering your own story or a friend's, then don't just keep it to yourself. Share your thoughts, add your voice, and let's turn this into a real conversation. The more perspectives we bring together, the sharper our understanding becomes. So go ahead, subscribe to stay part of this journey, drop a like if the ideas resonate, and leave a comment with your take because somewhere out there, your insight might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. Number 1. Need for approval. If you've ever listened to a friend wonder out loud, "Why do I always fall for the wrong kind of person?" You know this isn't a new question. Our hearts often run ahead of our judgment, pulling us into patterns that we later regret. At the root of this, many times, is a deep need for approval. We crave being seen, chosen, and validated. That longing makes us vulnerable, and sometimes it leads us straight into the arms of people who offer us attention but little else. The Stoics noticed this same human hunger for praise and recognition, and they warned against measuring our worth by the eyes of others. As Seneca once wrote, "He who seeks approval from everyone has condemned himself to misery." For the Stoics, approval was like chasing shadows. Imagine standing in a marketplace, listening to merchants shout, each one telling you a different version of what you need to buy. If you tried to please them all, you'd leave empty-handed and exhausted. The same happens in love. When we're driven by the need to be approved of, we don't stop to ask whether the love we're receiving is genuine or healthy. We only ask if it makes us feel wanted in the moment. The Stoic response was not to become cold or unfeeling, but to anchor one's sense of worth in inner character rather than in the applause of others. Another insight from Stoicism is the idea of misjudging what truly benefits us. Epictetus often compared life to a banquet. Food comes around, you take what is placed before you, and you wait calmly for the next dish. To grab, to demand, or to obsess over one dish is to lose the entire rhythm of the feast. In relationships, when we lunge after approval, we risk grabbing the wrong plate, mistaking attention for affection or drama for passion. We keep falling for what seems tasty in the moment, without noticing that it leaves us hungry later. The desire for approval can easily blind us to what is harmful, making us confuse fleeting attention with genuine care. From a Stoic point of view, the task is not to reject love altogether, but to approach it with wisdom, learning to tell the difference between what truly nurtures us and what only flatters the ego. When that distinction becomes clearer, the cycle of falling into toxic patterns begins to lose its grip, and love can take on a healthier, more enduring form. Number 2. Thrill-seeking. There's something irresistible about the chaos of a stormy romance. Think of the friend who swears they'll never date another bad idea, only to be swept off their feet by someone unpredictable a few months later. Thrill-seeking in love is much like chasing fireworks, bright, fleeting, and addictive. It promises excitement, stories to tell, and a rush that feels alive. Yet, just like old Tom in a small village who always chased wild storms instead of calm seas, this thrill can leave us battered, exhausted, and wondering why we keep returning for more. The initial spark feels magical, but over time, it often masks deeper instability. The Stoics were keen observers of human desire and warned against being seduced by appearances. Epictetus advised, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Applied to relationships, this means recognizing the excitement of a toxic partner for what it is, rather than allowing the adrenaline to define our choices. Thrill can be captivating, but it rarely aligns with the person we truly want to become. Taking a step back, pausing to reflect on whether a connection nurtures or harms, is a subtle practice that Stoics believed strengthens character. Stoic philosophy also teaches us to train our appetites. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. By rehearsing patience, moderation, and reflection, we can begin to notice the difference between genuine joy and fleeting excitement. Simple exercises like imagining the consequences of a choice or practicing gratitude for stable relationships gradually shift our attention. For example, Marta's neighbor, who once chased dramatic lovers, found himself drawn instead to small, meaningful moments when he began volunteering on Sundays. Over time, the rush of chaos lost its allure, replaced by steady, sustaining satisfaction. Recognizing the pull of thrill is the first step to gaining control over it. When we observe our own impulses without judgment, we start to distinguish between what feeds our growth and what merely feeds a temporary rush. Stoic insights guide us to value relationships that nurture resilience, trust, and genuine affection, rather than those that provide adrenaline spikes. In learning to savor what is steady and life-affirming, we gradually release the grip of destructive patterns and discover a more enduring, fulfilling way to experience love. Number 3. Secret emotion. Sometimes, the strongest pull in a relationship isn't obvious. It hides beneath the surface, wrapped in shame, fear, or unspoken longing. These secret emotions are the quiet engines that drive people toward toxic partners. Think of the shy librarian in a small town who secretly thrills at a coworker's unpredictability, even while telling herself it's dangerous. She doesn't admit it to anyone, not even to herself, but her hidden desire keeps steering her choices. These invisible currents are powerful because they often bypass logic, whispering that what feels forbidden or complicated is somehow irresistible. The Stoics taught that self-knowledge is a cornerstone of a good life. Seneca once wrote, "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than from reality." Secret emotions often flourish in the imagination. We tell ourselves stories about what a person might become or what love could feel like, rather than seeing what is actually happening. The first step in breaking toxic patterns from a Stoic perspective is to shine a light on these hidden feelings. By naming them, we reduce their ability to manipulate our behavior and open the door to conscious choice. Another Stoic principle at play here is the importance of inner integrity. Marcus Aurelius advised, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Secret emotions may tempt us to justify unhealthy relationships or hide our actions from ourselves and others. But by examining the motives behind our hidden feelings, we practice honesty with ourselves, a practice that gradually reshapes desire. Over time, we learn to recognize which emotions are fleeting temptations and which reflect our authentic needs for connection, respect, and care. Acknowledging secret emotions transforms them from a source of confusion into a tool for growth. Once we name and examine these hidden desires, we can respond intentionally instead of reacting unconsciously. Stoic wisdom shows that understanding our inner landscape allows us to distinguish between what truly enriches life and what merely stirs fleeting excitement. In this way, secret emotions no longer trap us. They guide us toward relationships that nurture our character rather than undermine it. Number 4. Childhood patterns. Our earliest experiences often leave invisible footprints that shape how we approach love as adults. Childhood patterns, the ways we learn to seek affection, handle conflict, or gain approval, can quietly steer us toward partners who echo familiar dynamics, even when those dynamics are harmful. Imagine a young boy who grew up in a household where love came wrapped in anger and unpredictability. As an adult, he might find himself drawn to partners who are similarly volatile, unconsciously repeating the script he knows so well. These patterns are not destiny, but they are surprisingly persuasive. The Stoics emphasized examining the mind to understand how it forms habits. Seneca advised, "The mind that is anxious about the future is miserable today." In relationships, childhood patterns often play out as automatic reactions, causing anxiety or craving in situations that trigger old memories. By observing these tendencies without judgment, we begin to understand why certain relationships feel compelling despite their destructiveness. Awareness is the first step toward disrupting patterns that no longer serve us. Another Stoic insight is the power of deliberate practice in shaping character. Marcus Aurelius noted, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. While this may sound familiar, it is less about controlling others and more about retraining our own responses. Childhood patterns can be softened and reshaped through reflection, journaling, therapy, or mindful choices. For example, a woman who always sought approval from emotionally distant parents might learn to recognize the impulse in romantic relationships and pause before repeating it. Over time, these conscious interventions weaken old habits and open the door to healthier connections. By understanding childhood patterns, we reclaim the freedom to choose differently. Stoic philosophy encourages us to look inward, to dissect the invisible scripts we carry, and to cultivate responses that align with reason and virtue rather than habit. In doing so, the cycle of toxic attraction can be interrupted, and love becomes less about replaying old dramas and more about building relationships that support growth, trust, and genuine affection. Number 5. Fear of facing reality. Sometimes, the hardest person to be honest with is ourselves. Fear of facing reality can keep people trapped in toxic relationships far longer than any external force ever could. Imagine Jane, who knows deep down that her partner's promises are empty, yet she clings to them, imagining a future that might never exist. She tells herself stories of change, rehearses conversations that never happen, and even rationalizes behavior that clearly hurts her. This avoidance isn't weakness, it's deeply human. We protect ourselves from the discomfort of truth, convincing ourselves that love can transform what is clearly harmful, or that things will eventually get better. But in doing so, we trade clarity for illusions, hope for avoidance, and short-term comfort for long-term pain. The more we ignore reality, the stronger the invisible chains become, making it ever harder to act wisely or break the cycle. The Stoics were keenly aware of the cost of self-deception and illusion. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. Avoiding uncomfortable truths may feel safer in the moment, but it steals precious time and energy that could be devoted to meaningful growth, self-understanding, and relationships that genuinely nourish us." Stoic practice involves the courage to see situations exactly as they are, without embellishment, without wishful thinking, and without letting imagination override reality. By honestly confronting the realities of a partner's behavior, as well as the recurring patterns within ourselves, we take the first step toward freeing ourselves from toxic cycles. This means noticing the warning signs, acknowledging painful truths about both the relationship and our own vulnerabilities, and accepting the emotional discomfort that comes with clarity, all of which require both courage and practice. Acknowledging the fear of facing reality allows us to reclaim agency over our lives in a profound way. Stoicism encourages us to meet the truth with courage and clarity, transforming discomfort into a tool for personal growth. Once we confront the reality of a toxic relationship fully, without excuses or rationalizations, we gain the perspective needed to make conscious choices rather than being unconsciously driven by fear or desire. In doing so, we gradually cultivate relationships that support resilience, trust, and genuine affection, while freeing ourselves from patterns that deplete our energy, undermine our character, and prevent us from experiencing the full depth and richness of life and love. Thank you for staying with me through this exploration of why we keep falling in love with toxic people. If you've read this far, you've already taken the first step: curiosity and reflection. Understanding the patterns that guide our choices, shining a light on secret emotions, and facing the uncomfortable truths about ourselves are not easy tasks, but they are where real growth begins. Remember, Stoic wisdom doesn't ask us to be perfect. It asks us to practice awareness, courage, and intentionality in our lives. By observing our desires, examining our habits, and choosing relationships that truly nurture us, we can break cycles that once seemed inevitable and discover a love that strengthens rather than depletes us. You've done something important today. Pause, reflect, and let that awareness guide your next step toward healthier, more fulfilling connections.